My name is Rachel Moore. I am 34 years old, an accountant living in Chicago, and just 6 months out of a painful divorce. I had convinced myself that family would be the anchor that held me together when everything else in my life had fallen apart. I believed that if I poured enough love, enough care, and yes, enough money into them, we could heal what was broken. That is why I spent $25,000 planning a dream vacation for my parents and my younger brother Ethan. A full week in Florida, beachside hotel, snorkeling tours, everything they had ever dreamed of but never could afford. I told myself this would bring us closer, that we would laugh together on the sand, and finally find peace. My hands trembled with excitement as I called my mom one evening to hear about the planning. The phone rang twice before she picked up. I said cheerfully, "Hi, Mom. How are the Florida plans coming along? I cannot wait." There was a pause, a silence that seemed to stretch for miles, and then in a flat tone she answered, "Oh, we already went last week. Only for family." I froze. Only for family. The words echoed in my head like a hammer. Was I not family? Did my sacrifices not count? Over the last 2 years, I had spent $75,000 on them. $25,000 for that trip alone, and $50,000 more for rent, groceries, bills, even a used car for Ethan when his broke down. Every check, every transfer was made with the hope that they would finally see me, finally accept me, finally love me back. But this? They had gone without me, enjoying the sun, the water, the laughter, while I sat alone in Chicago staring at the snow through my apartment window. That night I pulled up my bank records, something I had avoided for months. The numbers glared back at me, cold and undeniable. $200 for rent here, $800 for car repairs there, $500 for an unexplained emergency that Ethan had promised to repay but never did. Each line was a reminder of how much of myself I had given away, how much of my own future I had postponed to keep them afloat. I had canceled vacations, postponed buying furniture, even skipped therapy sessions, because I felt I had to take care of them first. The more I looked, the more I realized the truth I had been refusing to admit. They did not see me as their daughter or their sister. They saw me as a wallet, an endless source of money they could tap whenever they wanted. My mother had not apologized for leaving me out. My father had not called to check on me. Ethan, who never hesitated to ask for help, had not even mentioned the trip. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the words from my mother still burning in my ears, only for family. And in that moment, the betrayal cut deeper than my divorce ever had. I had given everything, only to discover that in their eyes I was not family at all. What about you? Have you ever been left out, betrayed by the very people you trusted most? Tell me in the comments. Maybe your story will help someone else feel less alone, the way I am trying to find comfort now. That night I could not sleep. I kept pacing, my chest tight, my mind replaying every sacrifice I had made. Every dollar was supposed to buy closeness, to buy belonging. Instead, it had bought my exclusion. I pressed my palms to the window, watching the snow swirl under the streetlights, and swore to myself that something had to change. The next morning I forced myself out of bed, still reeling from the sting of my mother's words. I made a pot of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop, determined to face what I had avoided for too long. My bank account was a map of sacrifices. Every transaction, a story of me putting them first and myself last. There it was again, that $800 for Ethan's car repairs, $200 for their landlord, $300 for their phone bill. Month after month, the pattern repeated like clockwork. It was no wonder I felt drained all the time. I remembered the settlement with my ex-husband, how his lawyer had looked at me with almost pity when he called me too generous. I had laughed it off, proud of being someone who cared deeply, but now I wondered if he had seen something I had refused to admit. Maybe generosity had become my weakness, a blind spot my family had learned to exploit. I scrolled further back and my throat tightened. Over 2 years, $75,000 had flowed out of my account and into theirs. That was more than a down payment on a house. That was a dream vacation of my own, a year of freedom to start over. Instead, it had been rent for a crumbling apartment in Buffalo where they chose to live, bills they refused to manage, debts they never tried to escape. For years I had told myself I was doing the right thing, that by keeping them afloat I was keeping our bond alive, that love meant sacrifice. But staring at the numbers in black and white, I felt only shame. Shame for ignoring my own needs, for giving up pieces of my own life, while waiting for gratitude that never came. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could my mother's voice have been so calm, so dismissive, as if leaving me out of the trip I had paid for was nothing? How could my father stay silent, offering no apology? How could Ethan, who never hesitated to text me when he needed cash, act like I did not exist when it came time to celebrate? I picked up my phone and dialed the number of my financial advisor, Karen Lopez, a woman I had worked with for years but had kept at arm's length recently because I did not want anyone to see how badly I had been draining myself. She answered with her usual steady tone. "Good morning, this is Karen." "Karen, it's Rachel," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I need to review all my accounts, tomorrow morning if possible." There was a pause on her end, but she didn't pry. 9 o'clock, she replied firmly. "Bring everything with you." When I hung up, I felt a flicker of something I had not felt in months. Control. That night I thought about all the times I had told myself I could not afford small joys. The weekend getaway to Nashville I canceled because Ethan said he needed help with rent. The new couch I postponed buying because my parents' electricity was about to be shut off. The therapy I skipped because I had to cover their internet. Each decision had been made in the name of family, but family had not shown up for me. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, realizing I had tied my worth to how much I gave them. I believed that by paying their bills, by solving their emergencies, I could earn their love. I wanted to be indispensable, but all it had earned me was exclusion and silence. The next day I sat across from Karen in her office, handing over folders stuffed with bank statements and payment records. She flipped through them, her expression unreadable. "This is substantial," she said finally. "You've been carrying them for a long time." "I thought it was my duty," I admitted quietly. "But it's not. It's destroying me." Karen leaned forward. "Rachel, generosity is a gift, but if it's one-sided, it becomes a trap. You've been financing their lives at the expense of your own. It has to stop." Her words landed like truth I had known all along but refused to face. "I need to cut every automatic transfer," I told her. "Rent, utilities, insurance, all of it. And I want every account locked down. New codes, stronger security, no more access for anyone but me." Karen nodded, pulling out forms for me to sign. "You're taking back control. It won't be easy, but it's necessary." As I signed page after page, I thought of Ethan's voice, the way he always asked for help with a casual tone, as if it were his right. I thought of my mother's dismissive words, my father's silence. I thought of Florida, of the sun I would never see, the laughter I was not invited to share. For the first time in years, I felt the weight begin to lift. That afternoon I walked back through the snowy streets of Chicago, my breath visible in the cold air, my steps steady. It was strange to feel both heartbroken and strong at the same time. But that is what I was, heartbroken by the betrayal, strong because I had finally seen the truth. I knew the phone calls would come. Ethan would demand. My mother would guilt. My father would scold. But I was ready to say no. As I reached my apartment and unlocked the door, I whispered to myself, "I am done being their safety net. I am done being used. My life is mine again." 2 weeks passed before Ethan's name lit up on my phone. I had been expecting it, yet the sight still made my stomach tighten. I was sorting through work files when his call came. For a brief moment I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. I answered, bracing myself. "Rachel, the landlord is breathing down my neck again," Ethan said, his voice breezy, almost cheerful, as if he were talking about the weather. "Rent is overdue, about $2,500. Can you send it today? I'm really stuck." I clenched my jaw, remembering the last time I had heard that tone. It was never about care or love. It was always about money. I thought about the trip to Florida, about the silence that followed when they came back. My mother never called to check on me. My father never asked how I was doing. Ethan never thanked me for the thousands I had already given. I did not hesitate. "Only for family, remember?" I said sharply. The line went quiet. Then Ethan let out a forced laugh. "What's that supposed to mean? You're my sister. Don't make this weird." "Weird?" My voice cut through the air like glass. "You and Mom and Dad went to Florida without me. The trip I paid for. You didn't even tell me. That was your choice, Ethan, and this is mine. I am done." His charm cracked, replaced by irritation. "You're being dramatic. You know we depend on you. Stop acting like you're the victim here." My hand shook, but my resolve stayed firm. "I'm not sending you another dollar. Not today. Not ever. Before he could argue, I ended the call. For a long moment I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Then I opened my banking app. My fingers moved quickly, canceling every autopay I had set up years ago. $200 for rent, $300 for car insurance, $200 for their phone bill, even the smaller transfers for internet and groceries. One by one, I hit cancel, each confirmation message flashing like a small victory. By the time I finished, my chest felt lighter. I was not just stopping the money. I was reclaiming my life. I called Karen Lopez to double-check everything. Karen, it's Rachel. I canceled all the transfers, but I need to make sure my accounts are secure. No one touches them but me. Karen's tone was steady and reassuring. I'll set you up with new access codes and two-factor authentication. We'll flag any unusual activity. Come by the office this afternoon. At the bank, Karen walked me through the paperwork. Her pen tapped against the forms as she explained each step. This will block any external attempts to reach your accounts. You're building a wall of protection. I nodded, signing each page with determination. It feels like more than that, I said. It feels like I'm building a future. You're taking control, Karen said softly. That's not easy. When I walked out of the bank that afternoon, the icy Chicago wind cut against my face, but inside I felt stronger than I had in years. The next morning I was making coffee when I heard cars pull up outside. Through the blinds I saw them. My mother, my father, Ethan, and a man in a dark suit stepping out of a sleek black sedan. My pulse quickened. This was no social visit. The doorbell buzzed, sharp and insistent. I opened the door, heart pounding. My mother's arms were crossed, her mouth set in a hard line. My father shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Ethan stood tall, his expression smug. The man in the suit adjusted his tie before speaking. I'm Brian Carter, representing your family, he said. Miss Moore, your recent financial decisions have raised serious concerns. We need to discuss your obligations. Obligations? The word nearly knocked the breath out of me. Ethan stepped forward. You can't just stop helping us. We're family. You owe us. My mother nodded quickly, lips tight. You've always taken care of us, Rachel. Don't turn your back now. My father's voice was gruff, almost pleading. We need that money to get by. Be reasonable. Their words pressed in, heavy and suffocating, trying to drag me back into the role they had written for me. But I was not the same woman who had once written checks without question. I straightened my shoulders and met their eyes. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice steady. You made that clear when you left me out of your plans. Now get out. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. You're being selfish, he snapped. Mr. Carter raised a hand, his voice calm but sharp. Miss Moore, we can resolve this legally if necessary. Your family depends on your support. The threat hung heavy between us, but I did not flinch. Then take it to court, I said. You're not welcome here. I shut the door and turned the lock, their voices rising outside but muffled now, like a storm on the other side of glass. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I searched for a hardware store nearby and called, Hi, I need new locks from my apartment door and a security camera system. Can you send someone today? By noon, a technician named Mark arrived with a toolbox in hand. He replaced my lock with a heavy-duty deadbolt and installed a small camera above the door. He showed me the app to monitor the feed, the red light blinking steadily. This will catch anyone who comes near, he said. I signed the invoice, my fingers brushing over the new key. Thank you, I said quietly. When Mark left, I sat in my living room holding that key, realizing how far I had come in just a few days. They thought they could intimidate me. They thought they could guilt me. They thought they could bring a lawyer to my door and I would fold. But I had not. I was no longer their safety net. I was no longer their bank. I was Rachel Moore, and I was free. 2 days later, I forced myself out of my apartment for my weekly book club at the Chicago Public Library. The city streets were still piled with slush, but inside the library was warm and familiar. I needed the comfort. The confrontation with my family still played in my head, their voices sharp, their lawyer's threat hanging over me like a storm cloud. The moment I walked in, my friend Janine caught my eye. She had known me for years, and she read me like an open book. Before the discussion began, she pulled me aside. You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders, she said softly. I sighed, too tired to hide. They came to my door, Janine, all of them, with a lawyer, demanding that I keep paying their bills. Her eyes widened, but she didn't interrupt. I told her everything, from Ethan's call about rent to the locks I had changed the day after their visit. My words tumbled out faster than I could control them, the bitterness mixing with relief that someone was finally listening. When I finished, Janine squeezed my hand firmly. "You did the right thing," she said. "They don't get to treat you like that." Her words felt like a lifeline, pulling me out of the loneliness I had been sinking into. For weeks I had kept the betrayal bottled up inside, afraid that speaking it aloud would make it more real. But with Janine, it felt different. She leaned back, her expression turning serious. "You know, I went through something similar a few years ago. My brother kept asking for money, rent, car repairs, new gadgets, you name it. I gave in every time, thinking it was my duty. Then I found out he was blowing it all on vacations. When I cut him off, he tried to guilt me, telling me I was abandoning him." Her story mirrored mine so closely it made me shiver. "What did you do?" I asked. "I hired a lawyer," she said. "A good one. Set boundaries. Never looked back. You need to protect yourself, Rachel. They're not done with you." She scribbled a name on a napkin and slid it across the table. "David Harper. He doesn't play games. Call him today." I tucked the napkin into my pocket, feeling the faintest spark of determination. That afternoon, back at my apartment, I stared at the number, my stomach twisted. Calling a lawyer felt like drawing a battle line I couldn't erase. But Janine was right. They had already escalated. Showing up at my door with a lawyer wasn't just a plea, it was a threat. I dialed. The receptionist patched me through, and a calm, professional voice came on the line. "David Harper, how can I help you?" I explained my situation. Years of financial support, the Florida trip, Ethan's demands, the confrontation with their lawyer. I didn't give every detail, but enough for him to understand the stakes. "It sounds like you're dealing with financial manipulation," he said matter-of-factly. "I've seen this before. Can you come in tomorrow at 10 o'clock? "Yes," I said quickly. "Bring any documentation you have, bank statements, payment records, proof of your support. We need to know exactly what we're up against." When I hung up, I felt shaken but strangely focused. For the first time, I had someone in my corner. The next morning, his office was just as I imagined, papers stacked neatly, walls lined with law books, his demeanor all business. He greeted me with a firm handshake. "Let's get to it," he said. I handed over a folder stuffed with records, rent checks, insurance payments, phone bills. He flipped through them, his brow furrowing. "This is significant," he said. "You've been carrying them for years." "They're trying to paint me as unstable," I admitted. "They said they'd go to court if I didn't keep paying." He leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "I did some digging after our call yesterday. Their lawyer, Brian Carter, already filed a preliminary motion. They're claiming you're unfit to manage your finances. They want control of your assets." My stomach dropped. Unfit? The word cut like a blade. I had worked tirelessly to rebuild after my divorce, taking on extra clients, earning promotions. I was the one who kept them afloat. How could they twist that into instability? "Don't panic," Harper said firmly. "This is a tactic to scare you. You have steady employment, savings, a clear track record. We'll gather documentation and build your defense. They're trying to strong-arm you, but you're not alone." I nodded, clutching the list of tasks he gave me: more bank records, letters from my employer, anything to show stability. That night at the library, I told Janine and the others what I had learned. Martha, another member, placed a hand on mine. "They're desperate," she said. "That's why they're pushing so hard. Keep standing your ground." Her support steadied me. For the first time in months, I believed I could win. But just when I felt stronger, another blow landed. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera feed. A woman in a gray coat stood outside with a clipboard. "Not my family." I opened the door cautiously. "Miss Moore, I'm Emily Grant, a social worker. I'm here to discuss a report we received about your recent behavior." My stomach twisted. "A report?" She nodded politely. "Your brother Ethan contacted our office. He claims you've been acting erratically, making impulsive financial decisions that affect your family's stability. We need to assess your well-being." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Of course Ethan would take it this far. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "This is about my family trying to control my money." Emily's expression stayed neutral. I'll need to ask you some questions and review any relevant documents. It's standard procedure. I grabbed my phone and dialed Harper, putting him on speaker. David, a social worker is here. Ethan filed a report. His voice came through steady. Rachel, don't worry. Provide her with your work and financial records. I'll be there shortly. I gathered everything I had prepared. Pay stubs from my accounting job, performance reviews, bank statements showing consistent deposits and stable savings. Emily reviewed them carefully. These are thorough, she admitted. Your employment history is solid. 10 years at the same firm, with promotions. I nodded. I've been stable all along. My only mistake was letting my family drain me. 20 minutes later, Harper arrived, briefcase in hand. He greeted Emily and handed her a copy of the motion Carter had filed. This is part of a pattern of harassment, he said. Her family is upset she cut off their financial lifeline. They're trying to manipulate her through the legal system. Emily's brow furrowed as she scanned the motion. I'll include this in my report. But my focus is Miss Moore's current state, not legal disputes. Then you'll see she's fully capable, Harper replied calmly. When Emily left, promising to follow up, I felt drained but resolute. They had tried to brand me unstable, but the evidence told another story. My career, my savings, my life stable, strong, mine. That evening I met Janine and our friends at a nearby cafe. I told them about the visit, about Ethan's accusation. Martha reached across the table and squeezed my hand. They're trying to wear you down. Don't let them. Lois, another friend, added, You've got your head on straight. They can't take that away. And Evelyn, usually the quiet one, looked me in the eye. We've got your back, whatever you need. Their support wrapped around me like armor. I was not alone anymore. 3 weeks later, I found myself walking through the echoing halls of the Cook County Courthouse in downtown Chicago. The air was heavy with the smell of old wood and polished floors, and my heels clicked against the tile as I followed David Harper to the courtroom. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Across the aisle, my parents and Ethan sat stiffly with their lawyer, Brian Carter. They looked so certain, so ready to convince the world that I was the problem. I clutched the folder Harper had told me to bring: my pay stubs, bank records, performance reviews, even the evaluation from a psychiatrist who had confirmed I was perfectly capable. Every piece of paper was proof that I was not the unstable woman they wanted to paint me as. I was terrified, yes, but I was also ready to fight. When the session began, Carter rose first. His voice was smooth, practiced. Your Honor, Miss. Moore's recent decisions cutting off financial support to her family after years of consistency show erratic and unstable behavior. Her actions have left them in hardship, ignoring her responsibilities to the people who depend on her. We are seeking to establish guardianship over her assets to ensure her family's stability. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my face calm. Harper had warned me not to let their words rattle me. Ethan took the stand first. His eyes darted away from mine as he spoke. Rachel's always been generous, but lately she's unpredictable. She shut us out with no explanation. We're worried about her, and we just want to help her make the right choices. His voice trembled as if he were the victim, not me. Then my father stood, his voice gruff. She's not herself anymore. We're afraid she'll destroy her life. We only want to protect her. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed there were no tears. She nodded solemnly, playing the part of the concerned parent. Carter called witnesses. First was a man I didn't know, Gary Simmons, a former coworker of my father's. He said, I've heard Rachel's been reckless with money. Clarence told me she makes strange choices. Objection, Harper said instantly, his tone sharp. Hearsay. The judge, Michael Anderson, nodded. Sustained. Strike that from the record. Next was a neighbor of Ethan's, Ellen Parker. She said, Rachel just stopped helping her family out of nowhere. That's not like her. Harper rose again. Have you ever spoken to Miss Moore directly about this? Ellen faltered. No, just what Ethan told me. Objection, Your Honor. Again, hearsay, the judge agreed, striking her words as well. Their case was already crumbling. Then it was our turn. Harper called Dr. Barbara Klein, the psychiatrist who had met with me after the social worker's visit. She sat tall and steady in the witness chair. Miss Moore is fully competent, she said firmly. She manages a demanding job, makes rational financial decisions, and demonstrates no signs of erratic behavior. My professional evaluation found her stable and capable. Carter tried to poke holes. Dr. Klein, could the stress from her divorce have affected her judgment? Stress does not equal incapacity, she replied without hesitation. Her decisions are deliberate, not impulsive. Then Harper called me to the stand. My hands trembled as I placed them on the rail, but my voice came out steady. For years I supported my family, I said. I paid their rent, their bills, their emergencies. I even paid for a vacation they took without me. I believed that by giving, I could keep us close. But I realized they didn't see me as family. They saw me as a bank. When I stopped paying, they retaliated. That's not me being unstable. That's me protecting myself. I handed over the folder of evidence letters from my employer praising my work, bank statements showing steady savings, and performance reviews from my firm. Each page was another piece of armor. Carter pressed me. Did you stop giving them money out of spite? I stopped because it was destroying me, I replied, meeting his gaze. I had to choose between their endless demands and my own survival. I chose survival. Judge Anderson listened intently, taking notes. Harper closed our case with steady confidence. Your Honor, the plaintiffs have provided no credible evidence of incapacity. Their claims are based on hearsay and manipulation. Miss Moore's records and Dr. Klein's testimony show she is competent and responsible. This case is nothing more than an attempt to seize control of her assets. Carter tried to argue, but his words lacked weight. He leaned on emotional appeals about family duty, but even as he spoke, I could see the judge was not convinced. After a brief recess, Judge Anderson returned. His voice was clear, firm. The plaintiffs have failed to provide credible evidence of Miss Moore's incapacity. Her financial decisions are rational and supported by documentation and expert testimony. This case is dismissed. The gavel struck, and the sound echoed through the room like thunder. Relief flooded me. Harper squeezed my arm. You did well, he whispered. Across the aisle, my parents and Ethan sat stunned, their faces pale. Carter gathered his papers quickly, avoiding my gaze. They had lost. Walking out of the courthouse, the weight I had carried for years began to lift. The city air felt sharp and clean, the skyline a promise of something new. I was free not just legally, but emotionally. I had faced their accusations and won. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a new apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline. The space was smaller, but it felt like mine in a way nothing had before. Clean walls, uncluttered rooms, sunlight streaming through wide windows. A fresh start. I signed up for a cooking class at a community center, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. On the first night, flour clung to my hands as I rolled out dough. You're getting the hang of it, the instructor, a cheerful woman named Linda, told me. I laughed, a sound that felt foreign and freeing at the same time. I began planning a solo trip. I spread brochures across my dining table, Italy, maybe, or a quiet beach in Maine. I had saved enough now that I was no longer funneling money into my family's lives. The idea of traveling alone, choosing my own path, filled me with excitement instead of fear. Through acquaintances, I heard my family had moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of town. Ethan was working 2 jobs to cover their debts. My parents struggled without my help. A small pang tugged at me, but it faded quickly. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. One evening I sat at my desk and opened the journal I had started after the trial. My words flowed onto the page. I wrote about the years I had tied my worth to what I could give, believing money could buy love. I wrote about the day I realized I was not their daughter but their bank. And I wrote about the moment in court when I finally reclaimed my life. My worth, I realized, was never in my wallet. It was in who I was. A few nights later, I invited Janine and our book club friends over to see the new place. They arrived with a bottle of wine, laughter spilling through the doorway as they admired the view. This place suits you, Martha said, running her hand along the clean windowsill. Lois raised her glass. To new beginnings. We clinked glasses, the sound bright in the room. For the first time in years, I felt safe, supported, free. As they left, I stood by the window, watching the city lights glow. I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. My independence, my choices, my life. And I knew I would never give them away again. 3 months after the trial, I stood in my new apartment, looking out at the city. The Chicago skyline glittered in the distance, the lights stretching like a promise. For so long, I had lived under the weight of my family's demands, but here, In this space I had chosen for myself, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. The mornings were mine again. I brewed coffee without dread of another desperate phone call. I lingered over breakfast, planning trips, thinking about what I wanted instead of what they needed. Evenings were filled with cooking classes, where I laughed with strangers who were slowly becoming friends. My marinara was decent, my pasta still lumpy, but each dish reminded me I was building something of my own. At night, I spread travel brochures across my dining table. A cooking school in Tuscany, a hike along the coast of Maine. I circled ideas, dreaming not of obligations but of possibilities. Freedom was not just money in the bank, it was the choice to live on my own terms. Through whispers from acquaintances, I learned my parents and Ethan were scraping by, living in a cramped apartment. Ethan juggled 2 jobs, my mother took in sewing, my father picked up odd shifts. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy, but it didn't last. I had carried them for years. It was their turn to carry themselves. One evening, my friends gathered at my apartment with wine and laughter. The air was warm, the clink of glasses echoing off the walls. To new beginnings, Lois said. I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle deep inside me. At the window, I lifted my glass to the city. My past no longer owned me. My family no longer defined me. My life was finally mine. If you've ever had to fight to reclaim your own life, share your story below. Your strength might give someone else the courage to do the same.